When you deal with nature, which is so complex, you realize that everything is interconnected. You have to think about the whole.
Change is needed very desperately. The world is beginning to see now really just massive environmental degradation.
We are seeing more of these extremes in climate. Flash flood, drought, flash flood, drought, and catastrophic fires in the Amazon and California.
There aren't going to be any jobs. There's no jobs, no food on a dead planet.
There's an enormous amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere today that wasn't in the atmosphere prior to the Industrial Revolution.
We're facing some really huge problems with our global climate system. Distorted water, nutrient, and energy cycles. But there's a growing movement of farmers and ranchers working with nature to repair our soils and bring these cycles back into balance. The solution is right under our feet.
It's only recently that we understand that soil is this living thing, and that if we optimize the life under the ground, we'll optimize life above ground.
And this is a paradigm shift of how we can increase productivity for farmers and ranchers, but also do it in a way that starts to harmonize with nature.
Does it smell like rain on a hot summer's day? And it does.
When soils become healthy and alive, they can remove a huge amount of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
The way we grow food can right now be a solution to climate change.
So if we get agriculture right, it's a win-win-win scenario for farmers, for society, and the world.
Come on! Come on!
All you gotta do is wait for me to hook it up to there, and then you can plug it into the hydrant and we'll fill the tank again.
Okay.
Find a calf?
No.
We can find it. Right?
Yeah.
This ranch has been in our family since 1900. We've been raising hay and selling hay for so long. My dad called me when I was away at my other job and said, I'm tired and I always get tears. I don't want to have to do this anymore. And so I got busy thinking of a way we could make this work. And part of the impetus behind that was not being able to hay, not seeing the long-term gains economically, environmentally. People started talking to me a lot about rotational grazing, holistic land grazing, dung beetles, and everything else you could possibly think of. It really piqued my interest. Came back to Mom and Dad and talked about what I wanted to do. Dad was like, yeah, it seems kind of nuts, but why don't you try it on a piece of the ranch this next year? We founded Barney Creek Livestock in 2016. So we've gone from raising hay and selling hay to raising cows and selling grass-fed beef.
I work with my dad as often as possible. We just took down this back fence that they were just in and set it up for half of a paddock, because in this last little triangle, we're gonna do a little bit of high stock intensity grazing to help the grass regenerate. Instead of letting them just eating bits that they like, they're all put into competition, so they just eat it all evenly, and that will help the grass grow back taller than it was before.
What we're really seeing is diversity in our pasture, different grasses we hadn't seen, which is directly related to the soil.
I hope it's wet enough. We can actually dig a hole.
Just having people like Nicole being willing to share knowledge and mentoring. It's good. I mean, she's a great resource and great human.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about what you've been doing here.
Trying to get what you always talk about, that living root, really trying to get it to root down.
Yep. So this is a rhizo sheath here. So
Okay.
see how soil's actually sticking to it?
Yeah.
We want these roots to look like dreadlocks because that's what's protecting you against climactic extremes.
Okay.
Let's get massive Rastafarian roots, and now we've got a system that's cooking with gas, because that's going to be supporting carbon drawdown.
So you want that sheath to be all the way on those longest roots.
On
Okay.
end, so that when we dig these plants up, see those lovely aggregates, and you see there's a rhizo sheath down there at depth. Well, what's to stop it being 20 feet?
I know, right?
There's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything about soil is really about communication, and this communication and exchange is happening with carbon. Carbon is sent out the roots of the plant to feed the microbiology. Now that carbon is then taken by either some kinds of bacteria or one organism that's called mycorrhizal fungi. It can expand that plant's ability way beyond the roots to access water and nutrients. When the first pioneers came into these grasslands and broke them in to plant other types of crops, as they drove that plow through the grassland, it sounded like someone had a bullwhip cracking it from a mile away. So people could hear those root systems just snapping and cracking, and it was a huge, really, really loud sound. Those are the systems that we've degraded and lost. So one of the things that we know about getting root systems down is they're going to directly translate to the quality of the beef product that you're producing. So we start to grow beef fit for human consumption, you know.
Yeah.
So a lot of the practices of feeding grain or using a lot of synthetic fertilizers, we take out that quality aspect. Now you're going to have to eat this huge steak instead of better nutrition in a smaller piece of meat.
Nicole always talks about when you've concentrated your operation on soil first, you can taste it.
It just has a more rich flavor. It tastes like it should.
We both have second jobs. He's gone for 6 months out of the year. He's a smoke jumper, so he's doing that during fire season. So it's the kids and I that are here with Kathy and Larry, and we just keep things afloat. Usually when Pete's gone, something happens. Sometimes I'm so afraid to call you, but I know that you'll always be there to help me. You guys jump right in, but it was so much fun to watch you move those sheep. I called Pete and I was like, man, I mean, your mom can just really move animals.
Well, when we started leasing the place for me, I wanted to do some kind of weird things.
Non-traditional.
Yeah.
You wanted to improve, just like Dad improved.
Yeah.
And this was the way you felt you could improve.
And just with the cost of equipment for haying and stuff and thinking about having to replace that in 10 years.
I go in the barn there every now and then and sit there and cry because I'm not running it.
But at the same time, you moaned and groaned when
Yeah.
you had to do it all summer.
When Pete first brought this up, what were your thoughts that, because that's a leap of faith. I mean, that is a leap of faith.
Took about a year just to get used to it.
But have you ever had a pasture that looked like these pastures? Okay.
We know that agriculture started around 10,000 years ago, somewhere in the Fertile Crescent. The earliest farmers recognized that planting in intervals, creating cycles of weed control and pest control was a way to manage the landscape. They harnessed plant diversity. Agriculture looks nothing like that anymore. We have become industrialized. We've used the latest technology to radically change the way that we produce food.
What we've been doing to the land over the long term is we've been clearing forests, we've been plowing, and monocropping. And in recent decades, we've been dousing the landscape with chemicals. Industrial agriculture has been a huge source of pollution and emissions of carbon because of all the machinery, all the chemicals, and meat production. Puts cattle in feedlots where they then become an environmental problem because these cows are emitting methane. In fact, over time, more CO2 has gone into the atmosphere from faulty agricultural practices compared to the burning of fossil fuels. We may get a lot of yield when practicing industrialized agriculture, but the quality suffers. Food is actually less nutritious than it used to be. For every one apple grown in the early 1900s, you would need to eat 5 apples now to get the same nutrition. And a huge irony is that most of what we produce isn't even for food. Soy and corn are grown for animals to fatten them up.
We've been on a chemical experiment for a very long time. Now people are seeing the consequences. By feeding animals grain, we're actually impacting on human health and in animals as well.
But now, a better understanding about the fact that it's all a system and advances in how to use regenerative practices allows us to move past those technologies to things that will work better, like no-till farming, farming without plowing the land, planting cover crops, the dramatic reduction in fertilizer and chemical usage, and putting animals on the land. Cows especially act like bioprocessors, eating crops and putting it back into the earth in a way that really increases the carbon content of the soil.
Our soils are tired, they're naked, they're thirsty, and they're hungry. They're out there uncovered and exposed. They're tired because they've just been worked to death, thirsty because they can't store the water that they used to be able to, and they're hungry because they're no longer getting the carbon into the soil from growing plants for more of the year. So we need to fix that. That's where cover crops can come in.
So these are small seeded fabas, or?
This is a new variety that I've got some contract production on.
See a little bit of a difference.
My brother Brian and I farm here in Bladen, Nebraska, south central part of Nebraska.
Is there an extra band of nitrogen, you think, right through there?
And we own and operate Green Cover Seed. At Green Cover Seed, we provide custom cover crop mixes for customers all across the country. Cover crops aren't cash crops. We plant them in between what we call the fallow periods where nothing's growing. They're better for the farmers and for the environment because we're getting our system back to a biologically based system. When our forefathers would have come and started farming these lands, most of it would have been 5 to 6% organic matter. After 150 years of farming, it's down to 1.5% organic matter levels. Cover crops put organic matter back into the soil. Organic matter is 70% carbon.
The darker the color, the more carbon it's going to have in it.
Carbon is the main food source for the soil biology. And so we need to bring that back because high organic matter soils, they're so much more resistant to drought, more resistant to insects and diseases.
That's good looking soil.
Yeah, you want it to look like chocolate cake.
Nice.
Once people understand the principles of soil health, the only logical conclusion is that you have to have something else growing out there. In cover crops, they're just going to be more productive, and that's a win-win for the farmer, and it's going to be a win-win for the environment as well. When we first started, we went to a conference that got us all excited about cover crops. We were looking for a way to bring some of the kids back to the farm, and we decided to go this route of trying to sell cover crop seed rather than trying to greatly expand the number of acres that we were farming. So we started building, and we've been building ever since.
Really what we're doing is taking all these raw ingredients.
What we do is try to design the mix that will be best for the farmer.
We have over 120 different types of seeds.
What they need for their fields to help improve their soil and to have more diverse crop rotations.
Modern farming, we tend to monoculture everything. We want to do a really good job of controlling one plant, and because it's very hard to control lots of plants, but the more diverse we get in our rotations, the less chemicals we tend to have to use.
If I'm only growing corn and soybeans, I can't have a really healthy soil because certain crops are always going to be pulling the same nutrients out. But if I'm surrounded by plants that have different root systems, different needs, they fill different niches within that ecosystem, and we see this huge influx of diversity coming into the soil. It's like my brother and I, we have different talents, different interests. You know, there's times when we maybe butt heads a little bit, but mostly my strengths will help his weaknesses and his strengths will help my weaknesses. It's the same way with plants. I need to have much more balance.
So that pumpkin you plant now, that'll be harvested when?
Right after it freezes.
Wow, that's gonna be ready that quick.
When we talk about farmers changing the way they do things, one of the bigger motivators is, you know, show me the money.
We'll walk out this way and we can.
That's where things really come together. And not only for productivity, but also for profitability, because now, without all the herbicides, I don't have a lot of the cost issues. And in no-till farming, I don't have the erosion issue.
Anytime you till the ground, you're opening it up and it allows for more evaporation and more erosion. By no-tilling, you're keeping the residue on the soil, protecting it. The no-till drill will slice through the residue, plant the seed, and then close the soil back up. And so we keep the structure of the soil intact. Then you get better infiltration, so when it does rain, it soaks in versus running off.
The thing that affects us the most is our rainfall events are less frequent, but they're more intense. I may have to catch my rainfall in April for what my crop needs in July. So I need that soil to be able to hold as much water as it possibly can. I can't do that unless my soils are really healthy. Every time I can increase 1% of organic matter, if I was at 1% and I went to 2%, I can hold an additional 25,000 gallons of water in the soil per acre. And that's huge.
There are 1.8 billion hectares of cropland around the world. And if you would convert a lot of those areas to these practices of not tilling, of planting cover crops, more diverse crop rotations, it would make a meaningful change in the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
If we want to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, we really only have one mechanism to harness, and that is photosynthesis. Plants left to their own devices would do exactly what we want them to do. They pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere using chlorophyll and sunlight and feed life in the soil.
And we can think of a plant as a pump because it's pumping carbon down and it's also bringing water up. And that's through the process of transpiration. which is actually another huge unrecognized factor in temperature regulation. Transpiration is a cooling mechanism. The more plants we have, the more cooling. So when people are working to restore ecosystems, the first thing they do is create a scenario where they can hold the water on the land. And many of the most successful regenerative projects have taken place in the harshest environments.
You see, it's drier than 3 hours ago. For me, regenerative ranching, first of all, is hope. Hope that things are gonna get better for the community, better for the owner, by working with nature. We are in a typical place in the middle of the Chihuahuan Desert in northern Mexico, very close to the southern US. We only get rain a couple of months the whole year. With the rain that you get, you have to produce enough grass to go all over the other 10 months. What I see here is that the water cycle is completely broken. We have a lot of overgrazing on the same pastures. When we started holistic management in my ranch, most of the place looked like this. So it's sometimes hard to believe for ranchers that we can change this. They think, well, this is a desert, you cannot change it. But we have to go back to 400 years ago, where these were grasslands. The call for this land is grasslands. We've been spending so many years fighting nature with really no results. So I think it's very important for us to understand the water cycle, the soil. So we're just trying to help nature help us. The name of my ranch is Las Damas Cattle Ranch. Las Damas has 30,000 acres. After spending some time in Mexico and the US working in information technology, my father talked to me and he said, "You want to go back and work on the ranch?" And I was actually waiting for the moment. The Carrillos family was a rancher family, starting from my great-granddad, and then my granddad, and then my dad. And he asked me to take the reins. I told him, we're gonna try this new approach, holistic management. My father was a little bit reluctant, but he said, I'm gonna support you because I also have the love for the land.
Hay que tomar riesgos, sí. El que no se arriesga no cruza el río.
So we're trying to fix this bare ground with cattle that is under certain control. "500 years ago, in this particular place, there were hundreds of bison, thousands of bighorns. They work the soil pretty hard and they move on. We concentrate the cattle in just one spot, mimicking the bison patterns of many years ago. When you put your animals together, there's much more impact on the soil. We're putting the manure so close together. We have these incredible dung beetles. This is the gazella. You see the holes there? 66% of the manure is going to get into the soil thanks to the dung beetles. That will help us infiltrate more water. That will help the grass to get better nutrition and to promote new grasses. The way we understand how to fix the water cycle is by having more ground cover. The more green we have across the year, the better for the micro herd, this little herd that we have under the ground that we don't see. This is nice because you have the ants working and also the termites. If we were going to do this herbicide, we're gonna kill all life. See all the fungi here? Why trying to kill this insect if it is part of the whole life cycle? We need to understand that better. When we started holistic management in my ranch, only very few people were practicing regenerative ranching. So I was very fortunate to have these regenerative ranchers like Jesus Almeida, who said it can be done. Jesus, we're seeing a lot of that happening right now at the ranch. They were my mentors. When I got into trouble, I just grabbed the phone and said, Jesus, I'm seeing this. Okay, Alex, do this, and you will solve it. And I say, well, he was right. You've been working, getting nice results for so many years.
Well, the thing is that it's very difficult for humans to change their minds.
How do you change their minds?
Well, I changed it because I was broke.
Ranchers change because they're broken.
Yeah.
When I moved from IT into the ranching, I came with a mentality of individualism, of competitiveness. But when the first town is 40 miles from your ranch, you have to rely on your neighbors. Then you start opening your mind and your heart as well. I think if we all can regenerate this land, we can create a microclimate that will really help us with the whole water thing.
And then in these tough times, right now, we're coming out of our third year in a drought, but we're still good.
Imagine if we were not doing this.
Oh, no, I can't imagine.
There are a few things that are very important in holistic management grazing. First is the mindset. If you have all this conventional mindset, you have to let it go. So you open some room in your mind and then you let the new things coming in. Then water. Because we can grow a lot of grass, but water has to be ahead of the grass. You can see we have this water storage and it has a trough on the outside. In this area in the Chihuahuan Desert, we get the water from wells. We take the water from the well to a water tank, then distribute the water by gravity to the troughs. Our herd is over 1,000 animals. They walk no far than a mile. After they drink, then they go back to water the next day. One thing we've been focusing a lot on these emissions, but in reality, water regulates almost 95% of the climate.
I think it's really important in this whole focus of greenhouse gases and water quality and all of these issues that we're talking about is to really step back and look at the big picture. Ever since agriculture began, we've been exporting carbon. Either we're sending it up into the atmosphere or out into the waterways. And the biggest driver for greenhouse gas emissions is water vapor. Excess water up in the atmosphere is creating these catastrophic conditions. So how do we get water back into the soil where it belongs? Well, when we start to pull carbon down, we're also pulling water down. These grasslands are net sinks for greenhouse gases.
The grasslands are very important as a landscape because they are vast, around a third of our terrestrial landmass. And they have deep soils, great carbon sinks, great water regulators. They really provide stability to the planet.
So we need to be really looking at how do we ensure that that grassland is being managed in a way that restores cycles. How do we start to build resilience into these landscapes?
The most massive, perfect storm is bearing down upon us. Now, this perfect storm that we are facing is the result of our rising population, rising towards 10 billion people, and of course, climate change. But fossil fuels, carbon, coal, and gas, are by no means the only thing that is causing climate change. Desertification is a fancy word for land that is turning to desert. You can look at it from space, and what you see in green is not desertifying, and what you see in brown is about 2/3 of the world. Now, we know that desertification is caused by livestock, mostly cattle, sheep, and goats, overgrazing, leaving the soil bare, and giving off methane. In Africa, where I grew up, I loved wildlife, and so I grew up hating livestock because of the damage they were doing. Well, we were once just as certain that the world was flat. We were wrong then, and we are wrong again. We've discovered we can use much vilified livestock, bunched and moving, to address climate change and desertification.
Mara is a special place with the game, the landscape, the scenery. To me, it's a paradise. The Maasai is a tribe that lives in the Mara. We cover most part of southern Kenya, all the way to Serengeti. They are a welcoming community with a beautiful culture. We love wildlife, and Maasais really love their livestock. I've been working as a guide in Nongishu Conservancy for the last 7 years, and it's been a wonderful job.
Enongishu is a conservancy that we started about 2013. My father came to Kenya and started farming in this area. Then we bought 1,500 acres right in this Mara ecosystem, if you like, on the river.
You are a smarty pants.
When we were farming, things were not going terribly well. All the way around. And we started to think we could take a leap of faith and scrap all the farmland and go on a massive rewilding project to try and make profits from the land through wildlife and tourism. Take the community with us and regenerate the land and wildlife around here.
When we started the conservation project, it was a very different scenario in this conservancy. It was very much barren land. There was very little grass available for the cattle, and there was very limited wildlife habitats.
Poaching was all over the place. People were cutting trees down for charcoal.
What we've managed to do with the community is to reverse that and see a huge shift from intensive agriculture back to wilderness and open rangelands.
When I realized that we could use livestock to reverse climate change, I found there were planning techniques, and from those I developed what we call holistic management and planned grazing.
We didn't know how to do this at all. We stumbled across the Savory Institute, an organization which promotes grass growth through using cattle as a tool.
The secret to this
When the Savory Institute came to Masai Mara, I was one of the first conservancy members to attend their first training about the holistic management. And we were lucky to be trained by a legend, the founder of Savory Institute, Dr. Alan Savory.
Finally, they plot the movements of the animals.
You want to bunch your cattle together. You want them to be one moving animal. We decided to train the communities on that. The way it was happening before is that there would be several different herds, and they would be racing for the greener pastures and never really leaving the land time to recover or rejuvenate. So we got everyone to put their cattle into one herd. We could then move that around in a much more systematic way.
A mobile bomber is a kraal that you can move from one point to another. They put the mobile bombers in the most degraded land. So by the time they live there, already that land has got all the requirements for it to regenerate. Seed from the grass, it's got dung, which is manure. They keep on moving around in the bombers, and in the end, those places are brought back to life. It's beautiful. The mobile bombers, they are predator-proof. The cows are squeezed in there, so when the lions or any predator comes, the animals don't have that space to push in there. Nothing goes in there.
I got a call from Michael from our Predator Conservation Program. So
Mara Training Center is a safari institute hub. It trains people on sustainable conventional management using the holistic management approach. The herders within the Mara, they really like the approach because the approach is just the same as what our grandfathers used to do. When we started doing the grazing in 2015, the level of the grass was 20% cover. And within a year of planned grazing, we had a 75% cover or more.
As soon as you have grass, you get the best wildlife. You get your small antelope, you get your zebras.
Now all the predators have come back.
We have a pride of lions that have recently moved in. We've got big herds of elephants. We have a resident cheetah called Kisaro. She's been a wonderful mom, bringing up 6 cubs. And she's came over because of the abundance of food in Nungishu.
And people are coming from all over the world to see our animals. It's the wildlife which brings the tourists. The tourists bring the money goes to the landowners look after the wildlife. It's a great big circle, and it's very holistic and it's good.
We're making amazing progress considering you've got 2 new insights. The use of livestock being not optional, but essential to save civilization as we know it. And then the second, which is we need to develop a holistic concept of how we want our lives to be based on our deepest values.
This looks to me like a piece of soil.
We had a dream after we got married, raise a large family in a rural setting. That was our dream. And our dreams come true.
We went through commercial cattle business, couldn't pay the taxes with that. And the values of the purebred business didn't fit our values. We said, we've tried so many things, what do we do? And at that time, holistic management and grass-based agriculture came into our experience. We went to so many conventions and seminars. Our learning curve was huge at that point, but it was exciting. And we quit doing the herbicides, pesticides, and chemical fertilizers.
Who would have thought of such a thing? That you can finish animals on grass? But you can, and where you're trying to build a case for sequestering carbon, cows will save the world. But it's because of grass.
I spend probably about 3 hours a day making sure the grass grows.
Look at that. Whew, what a toss.
Well, we are growing great grass. We're also very interested in making sure that we grow soil.
And if you think about grass-fed beef,
There we go.
it starts with the soil,
We're gonna take the Hereford, Dave.
I think you can do better.
Okay.
healthy plants give you healthy animals.
What about this big guy?
Healthy animals, treated well, end up being healthy people.
See that little red one?
Yeah? That really deep-bodied one right there?
Yeah.
Boy, it's a good one.
I know, it's a great one. But he's wild.
My parents had 5 children. We are co-owners of the James Ranch. My parents always invited all of their children to return. Well, first they kicked us out and told us, go away, travel, go to school, do whatever, but you need to experience what else is out there. That way, if you return, it would be on your own terms. And we've all come back. We all had to figure out a way to make a living here, and we decided to do dairy and cheese making. And why did we do that, Becca?
Well, it was because of the grass. The resource that we have on this property is really beautiful, cool season grasses. So we looked into how do we take that resource and convert it into something nutritious and saleable.
I mean, I grew up here on a beef cattle ranch, but I had never milked a cow or made cheese. And Becca doesn't come from an agricultural background. You know, we came from Seattle during the dot-com boom. We had friends that were getting ridiculously wealthy like overnight. But when I see my kids tromping through the pasture with their fishing rods over their shoulders, you know, that's just stuff you don't buy.
Ouch, ouch, ouch.
We'd take on 1 or 2 apprentices every year.
Lots of curd.
Good batch.
Yeah. I just came wanting to make cheese, and then it evolved into this. If you're gonna make the cheese and milk the cows, why not also be a steward of the land and learn how to care for the soil and also make good food for people?
Ricotta cheese, you can eat it right then, still warm with fresh peaches and just amazing.
Oh, pick, 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 pick.
The way from all of our cheese making goes to the pork operations. Gunther, my nephew, runs pastured pork, and so he'll take all of that way and give it to the very eager and happy to receive pigs.
What are you doing out of the patch, dude? What are you doing out of the patch?
I knew I wanted to get into farming, and I said, Dad, do you have a piece of ground that you don't graze? And he goes, oh, yes, I do. It's right over there. It's above the ditch. And jumping my full weight on that shovel got me an inch into the ground. I couldn't even break the soil. It was so bad. And I think we tried 75 varieties of things growing in there. And we learned that sweet potatoes don't like 6,800-foot elevation. But we also learned that sugar snap peas have become our little farm's favorite thing to grow. Our local community recognizes that each one of those pods is picked personally by these little fingers. And so, and his little fingers.
Yeah, just trying to keep the body limber. We do a lot of pea yoga out here.
Hang in there, back.
And we now have the reputation of being the people who grow the best sugar snap peas in Colorado.
It starts with quality of life. That's the first thing.
That's the why.
That's the why. And then you say, okay, how are we going to create this lifestyle that we really, really, really want? And then you say, okay, well, we could raise chickens.
I got involved with the chickens mostly through indentured servitude to my mom. So my mom started the chicken business probably 20 years ago now. Right now, we just have about 300 chickens that we have year-round. Oh, sorry.
Even though we each have our own businesses, if there's anything that impacts the land as a whole, then that has to go before the whole family and be decided upon by everyone.
And this meeting process is so wonderful as a way to give everyone responsibility. Because we looked around, we said, look at our kids. They're all really bright people. Why can't they just go ahead and run it?
My parents, for so many years, felt the heavy decision-making. I think it was such a release that they could invite their adult children to come and help make those decisions.
We respect each other's viewpoints. Don't always agree, but we respect them.
We work really hard on communication around here. We live and work on a ranch with 5 different families, and we all have our own businesses. We have a restaurant that takes all of the food that we produce, and people can come and enjoy a meal.
The restaurant is our baby. We were the last to return, and everybody had all these amazing products. You know, my brother's cheese, my sister's vegetables that had such great flavor because the soil has been tended and loved, and my parents' beef. And
we didn't know what we were going to do when we came back. We didn't have any agriculture or restaurant background. But then we're like, oh, we need a restaurant here. And they're like, great, go for it. This is a ciabatta roll that they're going to make in a better shape for me, but just tell me what you think of the ratio with bread. Maybe a little bit more than that, yeah.
That's a beauty.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Newfoundland, Canada. All I ever wanted to be was a fisherman. You know, they have the pride of feeding their community and feeding the country. I dropped out of high school when I was 14 and headed out to sea. And I fished on the East Coast doing lobster, tuna, and then I headed to the Bering Sea in Alaska and fished cod and crab. But then the cod stocks crashed.
In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the harvestable northern cod dropped 82%.
And it is amazing to see an economy devastated overnight because of ecological collapse. 30,000 people laid off. Boats beached, canneries emptied. And then the salmon farming was supposed to be the great answer to overfishing. It's going to employ everybody. But instead, it took all of the bad things that were happening on land, industrial agriculture, and moved them out into the sea, using pesticides, antibiotics. You know, I was working at the height of one of the most destructive forms of food, harvesting the planet and producing some of the most unhealthy food on the planet. And that's when you begin realizing, if we don't protect the oceans, there aren't going to be any jobs. There's no jobs, no food on a dead planet. But over time, I picked myself up and started trying to figure out what would it look like to do agriculture under the ocean. And I started diversifying the crops, growing both shellfish and seaweeds together in this sort of 3D underwater garden. We grow kelp, oysters, mussels, clams, and scallops. You know, a lot of what we do is really taking the lessons from regenerative land-based agriculture and bringing them out into the ocean, like year-round growth and polyculture. And so one of the things we do is just find a species for each season. Kelp is a winter crop, so it's harvest season. This is when we're just uplifting the kelp out of the water. Beautiful, huh? It's amazing to see these walls of vegetables come out. Cut it there, and that's harvest. We're cutting it off, put it in barrels, and then it was off to the processor. And this year, we're drying everything in old tobacco farms.
We're just trying to thin it. The outside will dry very nicely, but then the inside will the moisture will get locked in. So when we're done with separating it, it'll be just much more likely to fully dry.
Kelp is this incredible crop because it is delicious.
Cook it up for about 30 seconds here.
We can turn it into noodles and plant-based burgers, all sorts of things. And I can hand it to a chef, and they make beautiful kelp cuisine. But it also is a climate crop in that it soaks up carbon, nitrogen, and it creates this whole canopy underwater where fish and different organisms come and thrive. The way we seed kelp is we go out and we get a couple blades of kelp that's reproductive. We bring it back to our hatchery and we release those spores into fish tanks. And in there is string, and the kelp's little seed sticks to the string.
Give me this one, and give me this one.
And then we wrap it around our ropes.
There's the seed spool there.
And it's that simple. The kelp then transfers from the string to the ropes and grows vertically downwards. And it grows incredibly fast, one of the fastest growing plants on the earth. There are a couple reasons why regenerative ocean farming is important now during the climate crisis. One is our crops capture a huge amount of carbon, nitrogen. Think of them as the sequoia of the sea. I think one journalist called it the culinary equivalent of the electric car. And the impact is significant. According to the World Bank, if you farm 5% of US waters, you can sequester 135 million tons of carbon. All with zero inputs. That means no fresh water, no fertilizer, no feeds. A percentage of our crop goes to fertilizer and compost.
The nutrients from the kelp will transfer over to the water.
And then regenerative land-based farmers put that into the soil. There are 1.5 billion cattle on the planet. If we feed them a small percentage of their feed in seaweeds, we can reduce their methane output by 60%. And in sheep, we can reduce it by 80%. And then we can also take our kelp and turn it into compostable plastic alternatives, like straws, packaging. And that is stunning. Petroleum-based plastics are the things that are just ruining our oceans, right? So here's this amazing loop where I'm growing the seaweed, it's being turned into plastics, and the pollution stops. But the most important piece is that it only takes $20,000 to start a farm, 20 acres and a boat. It's all you need. And this is the secret to fast replication. Minimal capital requirements, and that just lets farms sprout up all over the place. Too much thinking stops at the water's edge. It's why our collaboration with land-based farmers is where all the possibility is. It's not really about seafood and fishing. It's really about how do we think of ourselves as farmers and weave these two industries fully together.
I own and run Harborview Farms with my family. We're typical large-scale corn, wheat, soybean producers, but we have a strong focus on sustainability. We're on the larger side. We're a little over 10,000 acres, scattered out over about 45 miles. One thing we've looked at as a farm is how do we grow corn and beans, but not do it in a conventional manner? How do we add diversity to the mix and still be able to make a living? 20 years ago, I was probably just getting out of school. Coming home, the farm looked very much the same. We grew corn, soybeans, and wheat, so that part hasn't changed at all. A lot of it was still being plowed. We didn't do any cover crops. We didn't believe in them. So the fields that we planted into were always brown. So our farm's located right on the Chesapeake Bay. Living here, it's very personal to me because my family and I, we fish, we water ski, we swim in the rivers and the bays. But years ago, we had a huge fish kill. It was caused by a toxic algae. They were blaming farmers for all the pollutants in the bay. So there was a lot of animosity. That wasn't my goal, to work with the environmentalists. I thought that was crazy. But as I started working with them, saw their passion, saw their desire to have cleaner water, and wanting to be part of that solution rather than part of the problem, it really opened my mind up. And that convinced me that I needed to change the way I farm. So over the years, we've transitioned. So now we plant these cover crops as soon as we harvest. So those plants are always growing. And then in April and May, when we begin to plant our cash crops, the corn and the soybeans, we plant directly into those fields that are still green, often have flowers, they're pretty. So you're going from this completely brown field that's been tilled to now planting into what appears to be chaos. You know, it's stuff up to my chest, 7-8 tons of this green matter. You still have your monocrop in the summer, which is your food production, but all through the fall and winter after harvest, you build this diversity. You get the diversity of insects up, you get the diversity of microbes up. And that gives us all kinds of benefits.
See the corn coming up?
No.
Huh? You don't see it yet?
I talk to my kids about farming.
What do you think it is?
I don't know.
They're not exceptionally passionate about it now.
Look at all the bugs. You see them all? There's a little spider.
But what we do talk about is climate change. We talk about solving the problems of the world.
This one's purple top turnip pods. Bunch of them, they taste just like turnips. Tastes awful right now.
As the talk about climate change grew, we started to realize that what we were doing was sequestering carbon and putting it into our soils. I got in touch with a company that was trying to start a carbon market to solve climate change. They found that the best solution was to get farmers to practice regenerative agriculture. The easiest way to get farmers to change to this style of farming was through getting them paid. So I jumped on board. We sent all the data from our fields, harvest dates, lack of tillage, nutrients, all these different things. And then it spits out how much carbon we would have sequestered this year.
This is some of the fun stuff we're getting into. Got the rapeseed flowers, radish.
Last year, we made over $100,000 selling carbon credits.
Obviously barley.
With margins as tight as they are, that's a lot of money.
I'm not sure what the purple one is.
This whole idea that the environment and the economy are at odds is not true. If you look through all the scientific literature, it doesn't stack up. It's when we work with the environment and the economy that actually now we're really making some money.
At Indigo, our goal is to help farmers be more profitable and produce healthier food. It seems reasonable that if we're going to ask farmers to perform this societal benefit of pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, we should be willing to pay them to do so.
This is probably around 30 days.
A carbon credit represents 1 ton of carbon dioxide that has either not been emitted or has been sequestered. So farmers represent the supply side of this. They create the carbon credits by storing carbon in the ground. Companies create demand for those.
There's a lot of industries, including parts of mine, where you have to burn fossil fuels in order to survive. Like an airline. To run airplanes, pretty much you have to burn jet fuel. So I think that in time, we can improve the way we farm. I can start to sequester more carbon, and that may be an offset for someone else that's forced to burn it in order to run their businesses.
Emissions reductions are necessary for a long-term solution, but it's not sufficient because we also have to undo the damage that we've already done. Today, as we realize the urgency of the problem, we just need to do everything. But changing agriculture, arguably the most important industry in the world, is a really important component in fixing our problems. Not everybody we talk to believes in human-caused climate change, and we find that's not necessary. Farmers may speak a different language, but they're the most sustainability-focused people I know. And so the fact that more carbon in the soil means healthier soil, and that means increased value on the farm, is something we can all talk about.
Over the last decade, we've realized just how important the management of agriculture and fresh water is to our overall mission. The use of water is increasing around the world. Agriculture is the largest use of fresh water in the world. We're now looking at several parts of East Africa and Southern Africa, working to establish water funds. We work with a city to raise funds to go upstream where the source water is impaired, whether it's from pollution or overuse of the water. We've found the return on investment is better when we put those dollars upstream and let nature do the work.
This is my farm. I live here with my husband. I have a few livestock, 2 cows which I milk. I have goats, chickens. In my shamba, which is not very big, it's just an acre, I've planted some bananas, some green vegetables. I do the crop rotation. They came along to teaching the farmers, and I started developing this mixed farming.
The Nature Conservancy work with farmers in Apatana on how they can practice sustainable agriculture. Apatana River is one of the largest rivers in Kenya. This river supplies 95% of the water to Nairobi city. Nairobi has a population of over 5 million Kenyans. They've been able to conserve this river, helping the farmers improve on rainwater storage and minimize pumping of the water from the river.
The water fund targets every farm that needs to make some improvement to reduce soil erosion. And our target is to reach 50,000 farmers.
This one is medium.
It's the large one.
They were able to design some nice, simple rainwater harvesting ponds that each farmer would have.
The farm has a lot of water from the roof. So I collected the water from the roof and put them in some water pans. So I use that water.
And whenever they need water to irrigate, they would use the water in this pan to irrigate the crops.
Is this another water pan?
Yeah. I'm not very near the river. Could not survive without the rain. So the water pans have helped me a lot. Before, you could just plant it and then you see it wither.
Now, Grace is able to do different field crops.
I've planted all this napier grass all over.
Yeah. So she's able to feed her livestock from these cover crops and at the same time control soil erosion within her farm.
What used to happen is that all the water raining, most of it would just wash off. And we used to have big floods. There was a lot of landslides. But with more people doing conservation in their farms, the water doesn't just run off. There's much more infiltration.
So you can see these trees.
Yeah.
The water has really helped us.
Very healthy crop there.
We're planting millions of trees in the river riparian areas, the avocado, macadamia, and other trees, ensuring that there isn't too much runoff when it's raining. So we're seeing much more water flowing. That means there's more water flowing to the city every day. So what we're seeing in the city of Nairobi now, they're getting good quality water all through the rainy season, and when it is not raining, they're getting much more. some of the people actually never got water in their taps. And they were having to rely on water that is ferried with jerry cans. The price of buying water from jerry cans is 20 times more than it would have been if you had water from the city water company. Now, many households are able to get water direct from their taps. And they can have a clean house, they can have a bath and be fresh, and they can bathe their children. 7 years ago, some big companies here in Nairobi were projecting that within 10 years, they would actually leave Nairobi just because they're too much water dependent and the amount of water supply was going down. So it's interesting to see that we've been 5 years after developing the water fund, and they're now getting much more stable supply of water. They are no longer thinking about moving out of the city. It's good for jobs, and it's good for Kenyan economy. And that water is only being made possible by the conservation effort happening in the watershed.
From the time I started saving that water, my soil has improved. Bananas, I used to harvest very few and small ones. These days I harvest big ones, which help me to get something in my pocket. I'm always having food to feed my family, and at the same time, I sell.
And we're seeing many, many farmers who are now getting much more income. And we're seeing that transform people's lives.
We're all sharing the same atmosphere. We all have an equal interest in pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, and it doesn't really matter where it's pulled out of. Still, about 70% of the calories in the world are created by smallholder farmers who are growing food primarily for their families. But those farmers are equally capable in participating in carbon sequestration. It may actually represent the most interesting cash crop for a smallholder farmer. And so that represents a significant potential around the world.
What I love about this place is we are in the Greater Yellowstone area. It is the second most biodiverse grassland after the Serengeti in the world. So we have 30 to 40 grizzly bears that will actually come through this property. There are packs of wolves, we have antelope and elk, and I mean, you look around and the diversity here is just extraordinary. And that is being fostered by good management practices by ranchers out here that really are committed to how do we work with landscapes and how do we work with animals, including your wildlife. See how tight that is? That's what the caraway is trying to open up for. So this is the caraway. The bears eat this.
So he ate that down, right?
He ate it down. So the bears come out at specific times of the year?
Yep, they come out in mid-August to mid-September.
There's caraway.
I grew up conventionally ranching. We had a cow-calf operation, we ran sheep, we had horses.
The chicks got really big!
My family's ranch.
Nelson!
Historically, it was my grandparents.
Nelson!
And my dad has 4 brothers, so there's a lot of masculine energy on this ranch. But over the years, it's shifted. And here I am now with my husband and our 2 little girls, helping manage it.
Down, Mom.
You got the faster nipple. Because of the changes in the ecosystem and the grizzly bears came down further, we were having challenges with our cattle. We've worked with Nicole for the last few years. She's helped us tremendously with information on the landscape. Now we're looking at what it means that the caraway has come into the soil and why the bears are here so that we can keep the conflict at a minimum so that we can all enjoy it.
The cattle are actually safer in a lot of ways because there's this really, really rich food source. Now the bears can eat this and then go and hibernate instead of eating your cows to hibernate.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Thank goodness. Thank you.
One of the things that we are experimenting with on the ranch right now is our range riding program. People out there who are very good horsewomen and horsemen, you know, if you have vulnerable cattle that are scattered, the horse and the rider are coming up on the edges, making it part of the cattle's choice to come together. And then we just sit there for a while so that then they take it on as their own behavior.
Animals actually moving together as a unit is not just predator protection. You're really getting this massaging process. You're really getting those soils enlivened up, and we're building that structure through that process. I mean, it's how grasslands evolved. We need to have livestock with grasslands. You can't have a grassland without livestock.
One of our strengths as ranchers is that we can share our discoveries.
The other day we were at the ranch and we found a bunch of worms. I never seen them like that, never. That means that we're improving the land a lot.
Yes. One of the most important indicators of the health of your grasslands is the diversity of the wildlife. The day we decided to work with nature, I would say it in just one word: abundance. We were excited this year to find the golden eagle, because the golden eagle represents top of the chain. Then you have this pristine, free of toxics environment. For me, holistic management was a perfect fit to do the cattle ranching business that I love, and also to protect and to grow this wildlife that I really love.
The Savory Institute, we have currently around 50 hubs in all continents. It's very exciting. We believe that by influencing the management little by little, the new emergent science points to an increase in carbon sequestration in grassland soils. But it's not just the carbon, it's you're healing land, you're supporting more biological diversity, more wildlife.
In the Mara, we already seen the fruits of it, because the cows are healthy, and we have grass throughout the year.
We started with 357 cows, and now we are heading to 700 cows. And Ongishu Conservancy has been a very great model. We have around 16 conservancies in Mara. Most of the conservancies are really interested with the approach.
I come from Lemek Conservancy, which is a neighboring Big Up Conservancy. The Lemek members have been going to the Mara Training Center to get the training on how to implement the holistic management.
We sit down with the herders, but we can just teach even under the tree. Just go step by step on how to do the plant grazing.
Now they're doing the block grazing plan. So we had a very fruitful lesson.
They really like it. Thank you very much. And I have trained around 700 landowners and around 300 herders as well. The people understand it is not about the number of animals, it's not about the land, it's not about the climate change. It is about how management is being done on the land.
The numbers of the wildlife is increasing on a daily basis. What they have come to prove is that wildlife and livestock can graze together without any problem. In 2 days' time, Lemek Conservancy will start the holistic or grass management plan, by allowing 1,000 or so number of cows to come in to graze in the conservancy. It gives them a bright future.
The way climate change has been framed is that it's a problem of emissions, and the ordinary person has nothing to do there. It's always been kind of leave it to the experts. And that has left people feeling helpless and kind of tuned out. How do we encourage people to shift not only how they do things, but how they see things? The very first thing is to know that healing ecosystems is possible. Your backyard, your lawn is an ecosystem. Just imagine if everybody who has a lawn took a little piece of that and grew some vegetables and herbs.
Wow, the artichoke looks more artichoke-y.
Then you get your connection to the land, and you're actually relating to all land in a different way because you see it differently. What it really is about is how people feel connected.
Green Cover Seed, it started out with just our kids, but as we grew that business, eventually we ran out of kids. So then we had to start bringing in outside people. The blessing with that is we're able to support close to 30 families.
With the rate that we're going right now, we'll probably cover 1 million acres with the cover crops that we sell. I think our customer list now is 11,000 different customers in all 50 states.
I'll be quality control. Thank you. Got a lot of corn.
We want to help farmers and ranchers regenerate God's creation, specifically the soil, but we also look at that as people as well.
Eli, where are you going?
One of the reasons the average age of the American farmer is older than it should be is because there were a lot of kids that were discouraged of coming back to the farm because it was tough to make a go of it. And we have customers all the time that say, boy, doing this type of farming, it's just made it fun again.
What do you think, Buster?
Not only are you producing something that's healthier, but I can see now that I'm building my soils back up. And there's something just really freeing about knowing I'm building something for the future.
Now what's the best thing we can do, Bug?
Push them forward.
Wait. All right, put your fence up, Bug.
We're into our third year of earnestly doing everything we wanted to do. I can't imagine doing anything different.
It's what you've always wanted to do, Peter. And I'm watching these two, too, and how they're growing up. Malloy with her coloring book, and I mean, that's pretty neat for a 12-year-old girl to have her own ISBN number.
My coloring book is called Don't Call It Dirt. Barney McQuack, he's telling all the little kids the story of regenerative agriculture. This page is specifically about how I'm the 5th generation of our ranching. This is about the healthy grass. There's a quote from Gabe Brown, "Nature does not function without animals." I started out with a 4-H project in veterinarian science. They said the way you graze and the way you do things doesn't have to really do with the animal's health. I was like, I'm gonna prove them wrong. So I emailed Nicole, Joel, Salatin, and Gabe Brown, and Nicole called me and she's like, you're right, we're gonna teach them. This is the last page.
You know, Pete always says we want to put more into the land than we take. Really sharing that with people, and that what we're doing and what they're getting starts with the soil and is going to end up in their food, and they're eating it for a really good reason. They're taking part in this whole movement.
When you buy from someone local, it has more meaning. These farmers and ranchers who are trying to work with the land and do right by their soil do need our support.
All right. So hop aboard, and you can just hook in right back there. I decided that it was time to take fishermen like me and begin transitioning all of us from wild harvesters to regenerative.
So once you harvest, you can actually keep growing.
Yeah. So create a green wave to train that next generation of ocean farmers. I pick a bunch, and then I go up and cut it. And they come from all walks of life. They're land-based farmers who can't afford land, indigenous communities, former fishermen. What's interesting is the majority are women. It's a big surprise. I thought it was all going to be crusty fishermen like me, but oddly, women seem to be stepping into this.
I put the food in the barn whenever you're ready.
Maybe they're the ones that'll figure out how to build a different, more cooperative system.
We can come.
For us at Green Wave, we think that climate change and inequality are linked. We can create an army of people making a living, solving the biggest crisis of our time. What I hope to see is sort of these blue carbon reefs up and down our coast and all around the world. The seas are rising, which I know is scary, but we can either build seawalls and flee our coasts, or we can look at the ocean as a place to do climate solutions. We can build something completely new, something creative and beautiful.
32 years ago that we started this, it's amazing how many ranchers and cattlemen start looking at it, and they believe that this works.
Jesus, you recently attended a workshop right here in Chihuahua where more than 500 people, you
More
said?
than 500 people attend, yeah.
30 years ago, how many people you were able to get into this?
We were just 5 of us.
5?
Well, you have to pay them to go. You have to give them the food and everything.
We can definitely bring back any former grassland or any desert. The beauty of what we're doing is when you go to a workshop or seminar in Chihuahua, you see a lot of young people.
We need to regenerate not just agriculture, but our communities, our institutions. Only when enough people in society say it makes sense can our institutions change. So we've got to get the young people to demand that policies be developed in national and global holistic context. Then the right things will flow to the top. You're not condemning anybody. You get beyond the conflicts. And then they'll have hope.
The piece for me that is the most important with holistic management is honoring everybody's voice. Every grandchild, no matter how old they are invited to family meetings, and they come.
Let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Amen.
Regenerative, in an agricultural sense, we understand that. What's the consensus, guys, on the barbecue? But it all starts with the foundation and what are the roots. Roots, when you're dealing with soil, you have to keep nurturing it. But in this case, it's the roots of our family. And just instilling that harmony is the only way to accomplish anything as a group of people, whether it's a family or a country.
They become of one mind to manage the land and preserve their quality of life successfully. This is what we've been able to achieve with our family.
My favorite part is watching something come from the grass to the cow to this beautiful piece of cheese.
These are beautiful. Isn't that pretty? Yeah.
I would like to continue learning this method of dairying and one day have this for myself.
What I'm seeing with regenerative agriculture is this is a train that's just not going to stop rolling. You know, everything about it just makes so much sense. To see the young people coming through and being really engaged with what is possible, how can we get good better? How do we really put nutrition back into the system and feel really passionate and excited about it? Change is happening and happening quite quickly. We really are seeing the transformation of agriculture.